Hi class. Today we are going to talk about copyright laws. This is a very important topic in today's world. I want you to imagine with me for just a second. You have spent all semester working on a creative arts writing and art project. You are finally ready to submit your project. You turn it in and post it online because you are super proud of all the hard work you have put into it. The following week, you see your project with someone else's name on it. Someone has taken your work and claimed it as their own. You absolutely would not be okay with this happening. You put in the work, and you deserve the credit. First, you need to understand what plagiarism is. Plagiarism is when you copy or very closely imitate someone else's work without their permission and with the intention of passing it off as your own work. This is what happened in the scenario I just described to you a minute ago. You would not want someone else to plagiarize your work. This leads us right into copyright. So what is copyright anyways? It is a legal right granted to the creator of an original work to produce, sell, or distribute their work. It gives them exclusive control over what happens to their work. It protects many creative expressions, including literary works, which is like books, music, software, art, and others. Why is copyright important? First, copyright gives creators the right to be paid for their work. It gives the creator the ability and the right to control how their work gets used or reproduced. Creators have worked hard at designing their product, so they deserve to receive the credit for it. Do you want someone else to take something you've made and claim it as theirs? Of course not. This wouldn't be fair, and I definitely wouldn't want that to happen to something I had worked hard on. Now let's talk about fair use. According to a textbook written by Smaldino, fair use provides an important copyright exception for teachers and students. So this right here, class, I want you to look right here where I said Smaldino and I wrote the year. This is an example of giving the author credit for something. I took this definition directly from this textbook, and so I gave him the credit. Small portions of copyrighted works may be used in teaching when properly cited and noted that the materials are copyrighted and by whom. There are 4 basic criteria when determining what content is counted as fair use. First, you have to look at the purpose of the use. Are you using it for educational purposes? If you are wanting to use something commercially, it is less likely to be considered fair use. Next, you need to look at the nature of the copyrighted work. What is the material you are using, and what was the original intent of the original work? A magazine or newspaper that is not specifically designed for education would tend to be deemed fair use in the classroom. Entertainment works, such as cartoons, are less likely to be considered fair use because it's not really for an educational purpose. And if the work itself is educational in nature, like that is what it is designed for, was education, it may not be considered fair use because of the potential negative impact on the sales of their product. So they are wanting to sell something for educational purposes, so you may not be able to take that and use it as fair use. Next, you need to look at the amount used in relation to the copyrighted work as a whole. In other words, how much of something are you using? If you're using a small amount of the total work, it is likely to be considered fair use. And lastly, you have to look at the effect of the use on the market. Is your use of this piece of a product going to negatively affect the sales of the original work? Copyright laws and the internet. The internet has brought about new questions and laws regarding copyright. Unless something is stated otherwise, all material on the internet is copyrighted. Email is also covered by copyright. Therefore, you shouldn't forward or copy emails without permission unless it falls under the fair use exception. You are allowed to make one copy for your own personal use. You can make copies of an article from a newspaper's website for classroom use. The exception is individually bylined copyrighted articles or articles from a source specifically designed for education. Those types of things you would not be able to use under copyright law. And lastly on this slide, downloading or file sharing videos, audio files such as music, or other works is considered a copyright infringement unless you have authorization by the copyright law or the owner of that work. So copyright infringement, that means it would be against copyright. You would not be able to use it. So what do I do if I want to use copyrighted materials? Well, you have to get permission from the publisher. Sometimes a fee may be requested, which you would then have to pay to use the copyrighted material. And then you always need to cite the source. This is where you are listing where you found the information that you are using. Just like I pointed out earlier in using the textbook for that definition. Are there places I can find materials to use without breaking copyright laws? Most definitely there are. If something is labeled public domain, it can be used. Federal government documents are also public domain, so you can use those freely. They are not protected by copyright law. You can do a Creative Commons search on the Creative Commons website. This will come up with things that are that you can use. Unsplash is a website, and so is Pixabay for images you can use that are fair use. Wikipedia, although this is not the best place to get information, it is considered public domain, so you can use information from there. Archive.org will list the copyright use with each image. And Jamendo is a good site for music. And then, of course, anytime you're creating something, you're always able to use your own images that you have created or photos that you have taken. You also can use images within Google Docs and Google Slides using the image search. You do want to be careful when using these images, though. So why should this matter to you? In the scenario at the beginning of this presentation, you had a creative work stolen and someone else claimed it as their own. This is definitely not right, and we should not do that to someone else's original work. Throughout high school and college, you will have to write research papers. You have to learn how to cite sources and follow copyright laws now. Violating copyright laws is stealing and is illegal. We want credit for the things that we create, so let's be sure and do the same for other people's works. Breaking copyright laws can also come with hefty consequences. You could be required to pay large fines, and copyright holders could sue for damages. How do I know what can be used and what is copyrighted? I'm going to pull up a copyright and fair use guidelines chart. As we continue our study of copyright, we will be referring to this chart and using it to determine whether or not something is considered fair use or if it's protected under copyright law. This chart gives specifics on materials such as printed materials, photographs, videos, music, the internet, and others. And like I said, we'll be using this quite a bit in the future. For now, let's look at a couple examples. If I'm looking to use a short poem up here in this first row, it is the little poem I want to use is less than 250 words. I am allowed to make multiple copies for classroom use, and I can incorporate it into a multimedia presentation for teaching classes. When making copies, though, right here it says I'm only allowed to make 1 copy per student. So I cannot make extra. I also cannot save this and use it year after year. So now I'm going to scroll down a little bit and we're going to look at illustrations and photographs. If I want to use a single illustration, I am able to do that and use it in its entirety, but I cannot use more than 5 images by one single artist. So that shows it right here. Now let's look at videos. When using a video in class, I can only use videos for instructional purposes, not for entertainment or as a reward or for indoor recess when the weather is bad. You can only use videos for educational purposes. All right, let me go back. Okay, then I want you to check out my references slide at the end of this slideshow. This is where you list any videos, articles, books, anything you used when creating something or writing a paper. This is giving credit to the original creator of any work that you may use to help create your work. So I used 3 different resources. I listed them all here to give them credit for their work that I used in my presentation. Thank you.